decided to talk about Japanese family values. Especially, I want to focus on how the Japanese view of family often keeps them from accepting Christ as their savior, and what can we do about it. When you are working with Japanese people sharing the gospel, you may find they seem to be pretty, open and listening, accepting, and you pour out your heart to them, you spend time with them, you pray with them, pray for them, open up your home to them, and then they seem to be really accepting well. And then you ask, so would you like to receive Jesus as your savior? And they say, well, I'm so sorry that Japanese people are so hard to make decision, the final decision. I'm sure you have experienced that, this frustration. Why? But then this phrase that you perhaps hear often is this: because my family in Japan is a Buddhist, or I am the firstborn son of the family, or I am the wife to the firstborn son. And you may say, why? I'm talking about you. Why are you talking about your family? And then this is a personal decision, It's not about your family, it's about you. But, for most of Japanese people, it's not that personal decision when it comes to the faith. It's somehow very interconnected to their relationship, to their relationship to their family in Japan. Even though family values in Japan are quickly changing, almost I can say it's deteriorating, and the family units are becoming less tight, when it comes to decision about faith, family still plays a big role to Japanese. And I think one of the key is to realize that the family, concept of family here doesn't just mean mom and dad and children, so-called nuclear family. For Americans, I think, when you say family, it means mom and dad, children, grandparents, uncle, aunts, and cousins. Perhaps it extends to rather horizontally. But when Japanese people think of family, it is more vertical. Mom and dad, children, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, ancestors. It is more direct line. So it's really deeply connected to their identity, the roots. So ancestors is one of the key concepts that might help you to understand why Japanese people are so concerned about their family. And in Japanese culture, people are considered to become Buddhas when they die. You may think, wait a minute, Buddha is a person who studied Buddhism in ancient India. Well, he is Buddha. But in Japan, the deceased, the dead people, are considered to become Buddhas, small b Buddhas, and to go to heaven. We call the deceased people Hotoke-sama, which literally means Buddha. And then there are even Japanese phrases like Oshaka ni naru or Odabutsu ni naru. That means to become Buddha, and that literally it means to become Buddha, but the meaning of it is to die or to be destroyed or to be ended. So the dead people are believed to be considered to become a Buddha. And there's another phrase, ご先祖様が草葉の陰から見守っている. That means, I think Japanese people are familiar with this phrase, but that means, that the deceased ancestors become Buddha and they are out there in heaven and watching over us. So you are constantly being watched over by your ancestors. My mom used to say, my grandma, which is my mom's mom, who was already dead by then, is watching over us. My family in Japan was a single mom family, so she is always saying, my mom is watching over us, so we are safe, we are fine. So her dead mother was very important to my mom. So I grew up thinking, yeah, grandma is watching over us. And so, therefore, they think if we become a Christian, we might offend our ancestors who has been watching over us. To think that way is really heavy on Japanese people, And you always think, if I become a Christian, what about my dead grandma who was so nice to me? You don't want to think, I'm going to heaven, but my grandma is stuck in hell. People don't want to think about it that way. So there's this strong emotional constraint. It is irrational, I know, but this isn't really Buddhism, faith, or religious thinking, but more cultural, traditional way of thinking. So, refuting, the Buddhist way of thinking isn't really correct, or things like that doesn't really help, because it's been built in as they were raised in Japan. Okay, and then, so for them, accepting Jesus or making a decision for Jesus is not so personal, even though they may be here in the US and their families are in Japan. It is hard decision to make without consulting or at least considering their families in Japan because of this emotional constraint. And not only the emotional ones, but there is a practical issues. We have in Japan the family altars and family grave. And those Japanese grave is not for an individual. I guess in America, if you go to graveyard, you see the name of the person who's under there, and then when he was born, when he died. But if you go to Japanese graveyard, and if you look at the Japanese tombstone, it says so-and-so family's grave. So, grave isn't just for one person, it is for the family. If you are the firstborn son, you are indeed responsible to take care of it. You do have an actual duty to your family. And not just a grave, but also there is family altar. It's called Butsudan, or for some other Japanese people, it's Kamidana. But again, this is for your ancestors. You can, worship Buddha or Japanese Shintoism gods there, but basically it's really for your ancestors. You have this little altar in your home. Most of the Japanese family has either Kamidana or Butsudan in their homes. And then they put some name flag of your ancestors and they take care of it. And if you are the firstborn son, then you are to take care of those family altars too. So you cannot just say, well, I became a Christian, so I don't care about this anymore. There is an actual issue here. So it is understandable that when they seem to be so close to accepting Jesus, but still hesitate. They are thinking about those emotional constraints and the actual duties that they have to Japanese families in Japan. Then what can we do about it?